Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we're here today to talk about following your path, following your heart, really doing the best that you can to listen to that internal voice and, forging your own road.
Yeah, we interviewed today our friend Allie Michelle, who tuned in from Hawaii to connect with us. And I'd say the whole interview just keeps coming back to a place of trusting yourself, trusting the universe, and really doing everything from a place of love and letting your heart guide the way, no matter what. If it's work, relationships, no matter what it is, letting it guide you from a place of love.
Yeah, this was something that was not at all part of my growing up. Like this whole, even the idea of listening to that, right? I grew up in a family, in a culture, in an environment where you had a path. You did, like if you were going to become a physician, then you did this, and then you went to medical school, and then you had a residency, and then, you went and got a job at a hospital, and that kind of world.
Specific path.
Yeah, like
achievement based on like outside of what you're doing based on how smart you are or how good you are at certain things.
Yeah, and pretty much predetermined. Like you could know, but if you were on this path, you could know 12 years from now, I should be at this other point. And the one main thing that I got from this conversation, and it follows so well with the way we now live our lives pretty much, et cetera, is this idea that you don't know. You listen and you pay attention, and that could be really scary.
Yeah, and the more that you listen, the better and easier it becomes. But if you, you were kind of numb to it for the majority of your life, and now you're open to it, and when you follow your heart and you lead with your heart, things are better.
Yeah, they can also get really difficult.
But either way, they're going to get difficult. But at least if you're leading from your heart, it's authentic and true and really stepping in instead of leading with fear.
Yeah. I mean, you say leading with fear, but like when I grew up, that was definitely not the language around it. It
wasn't. Of course.
It didn't have anything to do with fear. It had to do with really a pretty basic belief about what kind of outcomes are desired and which are not.
But if you don't go down X path, it means something about you.
I guess.
So it's kind of a fear-based thinking of like...
What do you think it means about you?
Well, if you don't follow the path of going to medical school and then doing that afterwards and this afterwards and that afterwards, then you're a failure on some level. You're not as good as your parents. You're not as good as your sister. Whatever the story is, there wasn't really any wiggle room for like...
I guess what I'm
saying... Go
saying,
out and be a poet.
I guess what I'm saying is kind of like growing up, I don't remember there being, or it doesn't, when I'm talking about it, doesn't feel like there was fear around it. It's just, you get told stories of what outcomes are in life.
But nobody knows the outcomes. Like it's just such like that way of thinking is as if like A plus B always equals C. And if you don't follow this path.
I don't think A plus B ever equals C. You mean like 1 + 1 always equals 2?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not understanding, like, when the kids grow up and they're like, I want to be a fireman or I want to be a doctor. I don't think that's from a fear-based sort of place. You just have kind of notions of what path you want. I'm just saying when I grew up, there was no... there were just the predetermined paths. I mean, I think a lot of kids grow up here and it's the same sort of thing. I don't think it's from a fear-based place. I think it's from an awareness maybe lacking place. Like there are only specific
paths that you can take.
That you can take.
I think it's a Western, it's like a Western notion. It's not Israel, it's not the US, it's just like a Western mentality of these are the careers.
You don't think in a lot of places, even, and I have no idea, by the way, as I'm speaking about this, that even in non-Western societies, it's like you become whatever it is that's standard in that place. I think it takes a lot of openness to say you're going to become something and we have no idea what that is. It's whatever will lead you. Mm-hmm. There's no certainty in that. And
right.
I mean, look at our kids growing up, they go on fair, unfair, this happens when that happens, like kind of this logic-based thing. This is one of the things that was actually really interesting in this interview was just the extent to which, and she's young, right? So she's like 20 or 21 years old or something like that. The extent to which she is currently in this place where she's just following. She has no idea where it's going to lead. I would argue, by the way, that can sound really beautiful, but at the same time, it can, for some people, like even the outcome, they can go, well, I don't really want that, right? I don't want the leaving all my friends behind and moving to a semi-remote place in the middle of the jungle, etc. So like, there's a real beauty and poetic beauty maybe to connecting to that pulls you, but then also a huge amount of uncertainty and trust that things will just work out.
Yeah, I think it comes always back to trust that things will work out, and that even if you fall and bump your head or skin your knee or lose your job or aren't happy in the jungle or whatever it is, that you tried. And as long as you lead with your heart, that's the point.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I mean, for those of you listening right now, I'd love some comments on this, specifically on this kind of episode, because I mean, obviously we talk to people from all different walks of life and all different sort of approaches, but I really do feel like, especially given how young Allie is, there's a real kind of beauty to this way of living, almost like nomadic.
Fluidity.
Yeah. And I wonder how it hits people, because it's not at all the way I think, I mean, for sure not the way people in the US or in a lot of westernized societies are kind of brought up, or just see where it takes you from everything, like from what job you're going to have to where you might live to your sexual orientation to your gender to all these things that we now are slowly opening up. The language is still primarily deterministic, like this is what you do. You become a teacher, or you become a doctor or a lawyer or a shopkeeper or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
And this is very different. Was it not the same when you grew up?
I mean, I think I relate much more to Allie in terms of being like a dreamer and not really following that kind of path. Like I never talked to my mom about what I wanted to be when I grew up in that way.
You didn't?
No, or my dad. But again, I come from like these creatives who made up their own rules as they went. Like they're very different than your mom and dad who led like very specific, like my parents are like much more like in the artistic realm of like not following rules and like really creating their own realities. And it was hard and it was bumpy and it wasn't linear, not saying that your family didn't have struggles too, but it's a little more linear when you have a job that is your career and you follow that path,
I guess, I mean, your dad's been doing the same thing since he was in his 20s.
But there's no like guarantee financially. That's all I'm saying. Is he like does his own project to project and like kept leaving things that felt corporate or felt, when he worked for National Geographic, he then dropped out so that he could just kind of do his own thing and make up his own rules. And that doesn't give you much of a guarantee financially. Or even job to job, project to project. Those long periods of time where he didn't have work and wasn't inspired. And if you just are always following your heart, that can happen. There can be lags in all of it. And there's some, not fear, but there's like just a lack of consistency in that.
Yeah. I mean, look, now we have a family and kind of these responsibilities outside of ourselves. So I think it gets even scarier for me sometimes about, because, mishaps happening when you're just single and you're traveling and you kind of are checking out the world or one thing, kids involved in security and safety, and from education to food to everything else, is different.
Of course. Yeah, I'm very rarely in a place of fear when it comes to money and when it comes to security and when it comes to taking care of them, because to me, it's really just about them being safe and loved. Those are the priorities to me. And that's just my perspective. And that's going to happen no matter what. And as long as I'm following my heart, those things will continue to happen. They're going to feel safe and loved. So I don't know. I don't think that much has changed in my perspective of kind of like the world.
Yeah, you're definitely, and we've talked about this in some other episodes. You're definitely, for sure, there's like a trusting element to it, but also this knowing, that kind of knowing aspect.
I have security in knowing that everything's going to be fine. Which
is, by the way, totally interesting, because that's not your mom at all.
No.
But I'm saying, because you said I grew up in this environment where like you just trusted.
Yeah, no, I had to create that on my own. I was born with it. I don't know where it came from, but it's always been there. It's just this knowingness. Even when my parents divorced and I felt lost and I felt alone and all those things, like I always knew everything would be okay.
That's interesting. Well, if maybe that's something that we can focus on, like in a future episode, about ways to cultivate that.
Yeah.
Because there's a piece to knowing it. I mean, look, there's psychological research that shows that people who are happier and less depressed tend to see the world through rose-colored glasses. And what I mean by that is they overestimate the probability that they will succeed. They overestimate the probability that things will be fine. They overestimate their placement, their kind of rank in terms of skill and all these other things in the world. Rose-colored glasses. And we sort of knew that. That's why the expression even exists. But when you look at it scientifically, it's kind of that question I've asked clients before, like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to be right.
I think that's our relationship tip of the day. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? That's a big one.
Okay.
In terms of coming together.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. If in every argument when you're in a relationship, you can say to yourself, do I want to be right now or do I want to be happy? 9 times out of 10, you're going to get out of that problem real quick. Because to be happy, you're going to come together and go in for that hug and just do the thing, whatever it is. And if you want to be right, you're going to sit there and put your gloves up.
Yeah. I remember sitting with a few couples before and I don't know, I guess most of the time that this comes up, I'm talking to one part of the coupleship in a session, and they were trying to kind of let me know why they're the ones who are right in this specific discussion. And inevitably we come to this place where I'm like, okay, well, let's say that this is true. Do you sort of hunker down and hold this truth until the other person comes to your side, or do you find a way to bridge the gap so you can enjoy your life? Like, how important is it for you to get them to understand that you're right in this situation?
Yeah, how much wasted energy are you going to put towards this to be right?
Yeah.
And in the end, you're going to be more wrong than ever because your partner's going to be like, you're an asshole.
Well, sometimes, but sometimes the other partner is doing the same thing.
Right.
And so you get two people on two sides of the river, like screaming at each other, you're an asshole, you're an asshole, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And then, when you look at the fact that so much is perception anyway, you could be right and they could be right at the exact same time.
Absolutely.
So that can kind of get painful. All right. So relationship tip of the day is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Holla.
All right. All right, everybody. We will take a little break right here, and then we will come back to you with Allie Michelle.
See you then.
Bye.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixed all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Allie Michelle, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, welcome to the interview portion of the Ignited podcast, everybody. And we are here with Allie. Hey, Allie. Soph, you want to kind of talk about how you met Allie and what your relationship has been like? And then, Allie, we'd love to have you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Allie, what's up, girl?
I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
I know, it's beautiful to see you. And we were just talking about how trippy it is to even be doing this right now. You're in Hawaii on the edge of a rock. And we're in LA, and it's just so beautiful to experience this with you in this moment. So Allie and I met, I don't know, a few years ago through yoga. I don't even know, I can't even think of like what the thing was. I don't know, through maybe Spiritual Gangster or something.
Something like that, because the yoga seems pretty small.
Yeah. We connected through the yogi world in LA, and this is where we are now. We fell in love.
Yeah, I met Allie. I met you in a yoga class when our kids were running around like crazy
in Palm Springs
at like a Spiritual Gangster thing.
Yeah, they were doing downward dog under Sophie. It was so cute. I love that.
Pretty magical.
Yeah, they've had yoga in their life from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you introduce yourself? What do you see yourself as? How do you talk about what you do? Let us know.
I label myself. All right. I don't know. I kind of do a lot of things. Right now, I'm releasing a book that I've spent 8 months writing, and it's a book of poems. And it's interesting to reflect back to see where I was at each point in time, because I was writing them really as medicine for my own heart and my own healing, and it wasn't with the intention of it being a book or with anyone seeing it. So it's this very vulnerable physical manifestation of my own healing. And I have a podcast with my roomie, Raquel, who's in the next room eating vegan mac and cheese, called Grown Magic, and we have so much fun on there. And then Instagram stuff. And I don't know, I feel like when you're trying your best to live from your heart and to live from your center and be aligned with your spirit, it's not so much what you do, it's kind of the quality of the alignment you're in and everything you do. So I don't know, that's my intro.
That's awesome. I love it.
I agree with that 1,000,000,000%.
How long have you been living in Hawaii?
A year? Not even, right?
Not even a year. My anniversary comes up April. Yeah.
Okay. I think so. The Ignited podcast in general is about relationships. And I'm really interested in the story of what made you go out there. Because you were living locally, right?
Venice Beach, like on Rose Avenue, right across from Cafe Gratitude, like very deep in the spiritual yoga scene, and I loved it, and it was a big part of my life. And then I went to the Wanderlust on Oahu, and I got there, and something just shifted. I had always felt a little lost in the sense, like I wasn't really clear on where I was going and what I wanted to do, and then I got there, and it kind of felt like coming home, if that makes sense. For the first of my life, I felt this huge sense of belonging, and even growing up in California, I didn't have that feeling that I got when I was there. And so I was with Claire, Planetful Soul on Instagram. She's awesome. And we were kind of just like, why don't we live here? And so it was her, my friend Alex, and I, and we all hopped over to Kauai. I was like, okay, this is it. So I went back home and I moved out, sold all my stuff, like moved in on my sister's couch for 2 weeks while I was searching for a place. And literally within like 2.5 weeks, I had gone from like being in Venice Beach, being in that scene, to all of a sudden just up and moving to Hawaii. So.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
A, it's beautiful. B, I can almost guarantee that for a lot of people who are listening right now, that sounds like either a dream or one of the scariest things they could ever even fathom doing in their life. Like picking everything up from where you were born and raised and going to a gorgeous, beautiful place.
The unknown.
I'm wondering if have you always been like that? Have you always kind of found what you want to do and just know that you can go there?
In a sense, I'm very impulsive because if I feel something is right, like deep in my core, and I feel that pull, I know that if I don't follow it, I'm not honoring my heart. And every time I've honored my heart, like a lot of challenges arise. Like, don't get me wrong, moving was not easy. I didn't really have a lot of money. I had no friends out there, like no idea where I was going to stay. And I had no idea if I was making the right decision, you know, leaving my whole family, my roots, like complete safety. I had a pretty like lovely community in the yoga scene, which you guys know. And so, yeah, it wasn't easy, but if you don't follow your heart, I don't know, it's like, why are you here? So I did it. Yeah.
Very cool.
And it's going well?
I love it. It's a whole new lifetime for me, honestly. Amazing. It feels like I've been here for a lot longer than 10 months. So, yeah.
Yay. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's very cool. What I always wonder when somebody can say that so clearly, I know without a doubt, you know, I deal with a lot of people with addiction. Sophie deals with a lot of people that have issues around eating and they want to improve their life. And obviously we've had the relationship that we've had now for 10, 11 years. And it's not always that easy necessarily, not for everybody anyway, to follow their heart. It's not even that easy for everybody to listen enough to their heart to know what their heart is saying, to be able to listen to it and follow it. So you said you've always been like that. I'm wondering, I mean, we can talk about your family, or I really, right off, I want to know what are some of the things that happened when you grew up? What were some of the signals to you that this supports who you want to be, and it supports your happiness, it supports the way you want to live your life?
Yeah, and to speak to that, following your heart by no means is it easy. It's actually probably the hardest choice to make because it challenges who you are, like at your deepest roots. All the childhood trauma comes up and all the triggers and everything, and it's a choice because growth, there's, like, I don't know, I think of it in terms of lobsters when they get like too big for their shells and it's really tight and uncomfortable, and then they have to go find a new shell, and meanwhile while they're searching for the shell, they're vulnerable, you know, there's nothing protecting their backs, and they go and they find a much bigger, prettier shell, and you know, they don't trust that they'll get from point A to point B. And so that's what it means to actually trust the universe. It sounds very corny sometimes, but that's what it is. Just knowing that if you're being vulnerable, if you're honoring who you are, then you are on the right path, and it will be okay. And if it's not okay, then it's just not the end of that story. In terms of my childhood, I spent a good portion of my life not following my heart, which is why there's no way that I can't do that now, because I know how painful it is when you ignore it. And so I was very introverted and shy growing up, and I was very scared to be seen and very sensitive. So I'd be in a room and I could feel kind of all the energy in the room, and it made me very isolated, and I spent a lot of my life alone. And so on the one hand, like, it was difficult for me to be in social situations, but on the other hand, I really cultivated a deep relationship to myself. And so that's given me a foundation in making all my life decisions.
I love that. Was there an experience you would point to where it was almost like a fork in the road? Like you saw, I could do what I've been doing and I'll keep getting what I've been getting. Or I can try to, I'm going to just, as shorthand, I'm going to say, like, I'm going to try to be brave and feel what's happening inside and listen to that and follow it and see if I get something different?
Yeah, you know, there's been so many of those moments, but I would say the two biggest ones I can think of were when I turned 18 and I got out of high school, and I had the choice to go to college, which is what my dad wanted, my family, But I walked into Hot Eat Yoga in Santa Monica, and the owner there, Deanna, was saying, we're doing a teacher training. And so I withdrew from my classes at SMC. I signed up for the training, and that really launched me on a spiritual path. You know, teaching helped me find my voice, helped me be vulnerable, and to allow myself to be seen in a room of many, many people, all like looking at me for direction. I mean, you guys know it's a very vulnerable thing to teach.
Yeah.
So I would say that was a life-defining moment, because that really supported me on my spiritual path. And then choosing to move to Hawaii, that was not easy. So, yeah.
How old were you when you did your training for yoga? You were like early.
Like I had just turned 18.
Wow.
Birthday. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. That's so young.
Yeah.
Like I can see like Kai doing that.
Do a lot of people discover that they want to teach yoga later in life?
I mean, I would say yes. I wouldn't say I know like a ton of 18-year-olds that were in my teacher trainings. I don't. Were there people your age in their training?
No, Instagram I think has made it allowed people to see that it's more possible now.
Yeah.
To create their own path, but that was just at the beginning of yoga really blowing up and being a thing on Instagram, and spirituality becoming more popular in the modern world. So it wasn't really okay for me to be doing that. Like it was, there were a lot of raised eyebrows. My mom was super supportive, and my dad too. And I just was like, this is important and I need to do this. And so, yeah, but everyone else was like, you're going to be a yoga teacher instead of go to college? So,
yeah.
You're showing all those people now. Those people are like, oh, okay, yeah.
All right.
Maybe she was onto something.
Follow your heart.
Yeah.
Totally.
100%.
So, book coming out.
Yeah.
Poetry.
And you told us something about this poetry.
Yeah.
I read your posts, and they're very poetic, and there's a lot of, really subtle use of language, definitely. How long have you been writing? What's the inspiration for the book?
Yeah, the writing process is interesting, because as a kid, that was the only way that I could kind of hone my sensitivity. Otherwise, it would turn into anxiety. Like, if I didn't write things down, I would feel like all of this energy was just kind of dwelling inside of me. And so the poems, I don't know if you guys have read Big Magic or familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert. She talks about ideas as their own entities almost that live through you. And so it doesn't really feel like I'm writing them. Like, if I sit down and I meditate and I'm like, okay, I'm open and receptive for a poem right now, it'll thunder through and I can write it in like a minute. But if I just go to write one like offhand, it takes a while and it like almost comes out in pieces. So it really is an interesting process of how centered I am, how still I am, and how clear my vessel is how quickly and how powerful the poems are that come through. So I've been writing all my life and reading a ton of books. Like, I used to read 2-3 books a day, honestly, as a kid. And I think that really has helped my writing. It's just reading all of these beautiful stories. Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
When is it coming out?
So it's coming out the 31st, and it's called Explorations of a Cosmic Soul.
That's amazing. I love that name. I can't wait. I need a copy immediately.
Immediately. I will send you guys one right away.
Yay.
Very cool. So, because we talk about relationships a lot, I wonder if you have this this ability to kind of listen to this inner voice and follow what you want. I'm assuming that sometimes that plays really, really well in relationships with other people. And then other times it might create challenges if you're being pulled to do things that, don't work in whatever the box or the frame of some of the relationships around you kind of dictate. And I'm wondering about family, I'm wondering about romantic relationships, I'm wondering about all those kinds of things because, I just wonder how that's come up in the past for you.
Yeah, here's the thing. what my mind wants is completely different from what my higher self wants, because what my soul, what that wants, is always governed by love. It's governed by the pure source energy that really connects all of us underneath the mind. And so there's a difference between like, well, I want this from you, this is what I need from you, versus how can I embody more love and give more love and follow that path. And it's not easy to do at all. It takes a lot of being okay with listening and sitting with yourself and being in that silence, because that's when we can receive that guidance. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time, and it's a practice. So in my relationships, if I'm following that more empowered place, it does bring up challenges, because everyone in our life, particularly romantic relationships, particularly family, they're a teacher. They're our greatest teachers. And so that's not easy, because we're all mirrors for each other, and we're showing like, this is what needs healing. Like, this is the dark place in you that just needs a little more love. And that can hurt sometimes, because it is a trigger. So it's not easy, but it's kind of just, is this from love?
Yeah. How does that work with your family? How do you see that pan out? Because for me, I mean, everything you're saying is exactly the way I live my life. And that's why I'm kind of sitting back and letting Adi ask questions, because you and I would be like, me too. Yeah, And it wouldn't be too much of a conversation. Like, it wouldn't be that interesting. To be like, exactly. I know. It's like I said it myself. So it's actually really nice to hear Adi ask the questions, hear his input, as it, as like I see you as a mirror kind of in a lot of ways, with the way you see the world and it being from a place of love. And I think that's what makes us actually work, is that I wouldn't say we're opposites, but I think like we see the world in very different lenses. And that's what allows us to, I think you were talking about puzzle pieces today, right? Weren't you just talking about lenses of the world? And I think when it comes to relationships, that's like, especially the one that's the most important to you. I've been with people that just agree with everything I say. I've been in romantic relationships where it's like a carbon copy of me, but a man. And it's actually quite boring. And we're all different. Like to another person that might work. But I love to have constructive criticism in a loving way. And I love to be asking why, and not just, kind of stream my way through life, swimming through and everything be easy. I like a good challenge. And I think that the fact that Adi has such an open heart to another way, and he's a scientist, so he's like very open-minded. He's like, as long as you can prove, like a kernel of truth there, then like I'm open to that being the truth, as long as you can't prove completely against it. And it gets into from things with food and nutrition and yoga and parenting. I mean, everything. This is our life. And so I think it's so fascinating to be with someone in my life that has an open heart, but doesn't see the world the way that I see it, and like necessarily not blindly, but like really trusting that the world and the universe has your back, and knowing that, like I know that in my core, and it makes me feel safe and it gets me through the day, and it's the pulse through life. And I guess you could speak to yourself on what your pulse is, but for me, it's absolutely love, and it's absolutely trust. And I'm interested because I have a lot of conflict in my life with my family, because they don't see the world that way. And it's not as much with like an open heart. And I think we can try and be the change, and we can try and live our lives this way, but that doesn't mean that everyone around you is going to live that way. And it certainly doesn't mean that your family is going to be that way. And that those challenges help make us who we are, but also to what degree. And I mean, I'm 33, I'm on my third child, I'm pregnant with my third. And for me personally, like, I want a little bit more ease, and I do, like, it's been fun to like in a loving way, kind of go there and fight the good fight and all of that. But when it comes to my like ecosystem of my home and my day-to-day life, I would prefer it to be a little easier. And therefore I've had to create like boundaries in my life that like with my own family. So I'm wondering, like, how do you handle that? I think you're a little younger than I am, right? You're 25 or something?
I'm 20.
20, yeah, you're super young. You're a baby. So how has that come up for you? And does any of this resonate?
Absolutely. And let me just say, I'm also very passionate about science and astrophysics, and I think that science and spirituality are sisters, and one without the other. There's an imbalance there. And so I love these questions. I love the challenges, because otherwise it does just sound like a bumper sticker that I'm saying. And so it's like, okay, well, how do you actually live from your heart? How do you actually do this, like in the day-to-day? And that's such an important conversation to have. And so with family, what has really helped me is loving each person to the highest image of their self, not what I think their highest potential is. Like my sister Alexis, we are polar opposites, like very different lifestyles and beliefs and everything. But neither of us is trying to change the other. And whereas she, for example, like she really loves closeness and like constantly talking and being with each other and stuff. And I'm kind of like an isolated monk most of the time. And so what a perfect relationship, because I have to learn how to set boundaries and use my voice and have a strong spine. And, you know, my energy kind of softens her and centers her and creates more stillness within that. And so, yeah, there are times where we're arguing or whatever, but what we've really learned to do is communication, like the art of communication. Like, this is what is happening through my perception. This is a trigger that I'm witnessing coming up right now. And you can get through anything if you take the seat of the witness. Like, I'm witnessing this anger arising in me because I've attached this story that, you know, whatever it is that you don't think I'm worthy, that you're doing this or that, whatever the story is at the time. But just naming it and being honest and being calm and allowing the other person to respond. So I would say the art of communication is how I deal with that.
So we call it radical transparency, is one of the terms we use for the communication that we've kind of had to come up with because we're so different in order to be able to build the trust. There's been trust broken in our relationship too, and so rebuild it maybe even, and maintain the sense that we're in it together even though we come from different places. And so we end up communicating and being honest about things that, from what we understand from other couples that we talk to on a pretty regular basis, is pretty foreign for people in romantic relationships. We tell the other person things that are going on in our heads and in our minds and in our behavior when they're not around, literally just to bring them into our life and our presence and our consciousness and the way we see the world. And so it's really interesting that you talk about you and your sister coming from different places and needing to find a way to, through language, and that's probably body language and verbal, be able to express to the other person, even in times of conflict, you know, I may not be doing or seeming exactly the way you want me to, but here's what I'm going through in my head and why it makes sense.
Absolutely. And then usually after they share that, you can kind of find the truth with a capital T. Mm-hmm. Like, you can meet in the center, but it takes a lot of courage to actually say what you're feeling and what you're thinking, because one, there's a fear of hurting the other person. And two, there's just a fear of not being heard at all. Like, there are so many fears about speaking your truth, but that's where all of the growth is. That's why we've attracted these people into our lives, so that we can learn how to deal with this. Because if everything were super easy, we would never evolve.
And we wouldn't value it, right?
No, it would be boring, like Sophie said. So, yeah.
That's very cool. So we have 5 questions that we ask everybody who comes on the podcast. And this is your time.
That time.
Okay, Allie, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Here and now. Breathe in and out.
Say it again.
Here and now, and breathe in and out. Sentences are so simple but so powerful, because if you think about it, here and now, all of our problems are in a movie that we put in our head. Like, you may be thinking about an argument with your partner or something that you should do. That's just your imagination. Like, really, you're right here. All that's happening is me talking to you right now. And so, if you're here and now, there is no anxiety, there is no suffering, because you're just dealing with whatever arises in the moment and meeting it where it's at. And breathing in and out, you're inviting more life force into you. You're pausing so that you can respond instead of react. I mean, the power of the breath is so underrated, but you guys know the value of it just coming from the yoga scene. But if you just go here and now and take a very long breath in and out, you'll feel an entire shift in your system, both energetically and physically.
Yeah, it's a great pause and a great way to be mindful. And even if mindfulness is something that seems daunting, or meditating is something that seems daunting, or being in the present moment, all these things that like maybe would freak someone out that isn't in this world, it's such a simple thing to just focus on your breath, which we do multiple times a day. We all do it, whether you believe in it or not, as it being a tactic. Focus on your breath, the inhale, the exhale. And like you said, it just kind of lengthens that space.
Absolutely. I mean, even in The Alchemist, he said, like, the most powerful truths should be so short and simple they can be written on an emerald. And it's the truth. When you take a step back, like, that's when you can hear your heart. That's when you can listen to your internal guidance system, because you already know, what you should do. And the hesitation comes from recognizing the challenge that is going to arise from a specific situation. But, just here and now, in and out.
Love that.
Love it. What has been your proudest moment?
That is something that I need to work on, because if I finish something, I automatically start going to the next thing. And I have this kind of like jackrabbit mindset, and so I have to like pause and be proud of myself. But I think when we launched the podcast, it was because I pray like every single morning, use me, universe, natural intelligence, as an instrument of love. Like, where can I be of service? Where can I give more? And that was the first time where I was like, okay, this is like an answer, because it was such a vulnerable offering at the time. And my mom was here, all of like the beautiful community in Kauai was here, just people really close to my heart, and having everyone celebrate with us, it was kind of this magical moment. So
that's nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you feel like was your hardest moment, or one of your hardest moments?
I would say before I went to India, I was living on Oahu for a couple of months, and I was living in the jungle, very deep, like by myself. I had just moved there, and I didn't know anyone, and I just spent really all my time alone. And on the one hand, it was very isolating, but it was also very strengthening, because it would have been very easy for me to just pick up and turn around and go home and kind of slide back into my life. But I really listened and was like, I'm supposed to be here. Like, I can feel there's something for me to learn, regardless of wherever my purpose is, because your purpose is wherever you are. I just knew that there was a massive learning opportunity there. So learning to really be with myself, that was a huge challenge.
I find like stillness is the hardest thing, especially when you're sitting in something uncomfortable. And I now know, at the ripe age of 33, I now know that uncomfortable sitting
that no matter what on the other side is the beauty. I know that. I know that if I just sit through what's uncomfortable, what's on the other side is going to be epic, and the growth, and, you know, in every situation, it's just what works, and it's just the way it works. And so I find deep comfort in that now. It doesn't make it any easier in the moment. It's still not fun to be uncomfortable, but if you can kind of feel like that sense of just knowing of like, I know what's on the other side. If I can just breathe through this and sit through this with as much grace as possible, it's going to be so great on the other side.
Absolutely. And I think it's like shifting your perspective from, wow, I'm so uncomfortable and I'm feeling a lot of pain right now, or whatever it is, and thinking, interesting information. Because really that's what it is. It's information that you were triggered in some way, or you picked up a certain energy, or something doesn't feel quite right. But your body is so smart, and the body doesn't lie. So just learning to really sit with that and be like, okay, what can I like learn from this uncomfortable situation? Because like we were talking about the rose color time, we're just kind of staying where we are. Yeah.
What do you do as your self-care ritual? So, you know, a lot of people want to incorporate techniques into their life to be able to actually do a lot of what we've talked about, incorporate more meditation and mindfulness into their life, feel more connected, etc. How do you take care of yourself to maximize the potential of all of that?
My mornings are very sacred to me. I have a morning routine, and it'll shift and change depending on what I need at that time. But I wake up, and first thing I do is I write, because I think when you're still in that theta brainwave state, when you first roll out of bed and your nervous system isn't super activated yet, it's really important to kind of allow your subconscious to take the form into the form through writing. At least for me, that's what resonates. And so I do that, and I have my like mindful cup of coffee, and then I'll do some yoga or whatever movement. I used to run 6 miles, but I'm in a more yin place in my life now. And then meditating and just listening, because, you know, I'm talking and conversing all day. So I think it's so important to just start my morning in stillness and listen. Yeah.
Very cool.
And the name of our podcast is Ignited. So what ignites you? What lights you up?
The nature here. I love playing in it. I love feeling the love that comes back from it. The land is so alive here in a way that it is nowhere else. I love meditating with my boyfriend and spending time with him, and just having such a powerful, magical mirror in a person, and dancing with my roommate. And I love the people in my life. They bring me so much joy and so many lessons, and I really treasure every moment with them. So.
Nice. That's awesome.
What a nice way to end our relationships podcast about the relationships in your life.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We really look forward to the book. So let us know when we can get it and where and all that kind of stuff. And we'll make sure to include a link for people here so that they can go find it when this thing comes out. It looks like night is falling over in Hawaii as it has been here. It's gotten darker as we've done this. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for being with us.
Big love.
I love you guys and everything you're doing, providing wisdom for people. It's so powerful. So I just want to honor you and thank you for being such a beautiful human.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So much love. See you in the flesh soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.